What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm back to drop another video of how I make this beat for y'all. And in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I figured why not make a beat to break up to. Kidding, I'm joking. Unless you really do break up to somebody with this. And without anything else, let's get right into it. So I know I usually like to make my R&B beats around 100 to 105 BPM. With this one, I just left it at the default BPM, which is 130. So the very first thing I did was lay down some chords. And with that, I use scalar and use the felt piano preset. Now for me, the felt piano and scalar, it just sounds perfect when it comes to making R&B and some luscious type of chords. And this is the chord progression I came up with. This is just an A sharp major 7th chord where I took a copy of the root note of each chord and dropped it down an octave. Then for the second half, I raised up the second note up an octave to where it's going from the D up to another D, just an octave higher. The next thing I did after I laid out the chords was simply strum them just to make them sound a little bit more realistic and give it a little bit more feel. Now, usually when I strum chords, I just simply highlight them all by selecting Control A, then Alt S. That opens the strummizer window, and then you can play with the strength and the tension knob from the start and the end of it. And that gives me a pretty good basic outline of where I want it to be. But with this one, I wanted to add a little bit more, so I just kind of played with the notes individually myself. So you see how this E is a little bit further in than the rest of them. That was just me nudging the chords over just a little bit. A major part of this beat is the layering and the processing I do to all the layers. So that's what makes everything come together, in my opinion. After I laid down the chords and strummed them, I came over to the EQ and rolled out a lot of the low end just so it wouldn't interfere with anything else, because the felt piano in Scalar 2 is pretty low and heavy, and I didn't want it to interfere with any kicks or 808s I was going to lay down. The next thing I did was throw down the reverb and played around with some of the knobs a little bit until I got it to where I wanted it to be. The next thing I did was throw down Fluid Delay 3, and I lowered the wet knob all the way down, and then I played with the time knob just so it would play in time, followed by a basic fruity chorus and a basic fruity flangus. With all the effects on, this is what it sounds like. So as I said earlier, a lot of what makes up this beat is the layering and the processing. The next layer to this beat was simply adding a basic Rhodes piano from the stock plugin of Flex. Now all I did was copy and paste the initial chord from the piano and just dropped it down to the Rhodes piano and added the effects. Without the effects, this is what it sounds like. Now with the effects, for the effects, all I did was threw on a fruity EQ where I rolled out a lot of the highs and a lot of the lows. The very last layer I added on was a pad from the 40's very own Contact Player preset bank. This is what it sounds like without any effects. That's what it sounds like with the EQ on. After I laid down all the pianos and the pass sounds, I kind of went back and I adjusted the velocity for each and every single one of them because I didn't want each note to be hitting at the same velocity. I just highlighted everything with Control A, came up to this tools icon and clicked the randomize button. And with that, I played around with the pan and the velocity knob. Then once I was happy with all that, I went ahead into the channel rack and tweaked all of the volume knobs. I knew I wanted to render everything as one audio track for this, so that was the whole point of me tweaking all the volume knobs, just so I can get the levels just right. And the longer I make beats and produce, the more I realize that gain staging is really a very important step in just the creative process. Altogether, this is what it sounds like. After that, I went ahead and pitched it down 400 cents, and instead of it being instead of it being a sharp major, it turns into a F minor. And immediately after pitching down, I went ahead and reversed it. As soon as I heard that, after I reversed it and pitched it down, I automatically thought Bryson Tiller. And in my head, every time I think of a Bryson Tiller song, I automatically think of beats that have vocal chops and samples in them. So I went ahead and grabbed a random splice vocal sample and chopped it up and laid it down how I thought it would fit. There's also effects on the vocals as well, just to make it way more ambient and vibey, and also to make sure that the vocals aren't sitting on top of the beat. I wanted to be a bit in the background as, you know, some ear candy. So I added an EQ, rolled down all the high end, all the low end. Added a Fruity Reverb 2, played with the knobs. Added a Fruity Delay 3, lowered the wet knob, and just left everything else the same. Added a basic Fruity Chorus, basic Fruity Flangus, a Fruity Love Filter, and I lowered the cut knob down a bit just so it can have that underwater sound a little bit. Another thing I like to do with vocals is the same thing I talked about earlier when it comes to gauge staging. I lowered the volume down quite a bit to -20 dB just so the vocals aren't sitting on top of the beat. I want them to be completely in the background as ear candy. Putting the melody together was the hardest part of the whole beat, because after that, it came to the easiest part, adding the drums. A couple things that give the beat a little extra oomph. I went ahead and put some slide 808 notes in here when I did the bass. Then for the hi-hats, I played around with the velocity and the panning a bit, just so it would bounce around in the ears a little bit. And that's really all it really was to this beat. Sometimes it's a soul sample, sometimes it's R&B. This time it's happened to be R&B. If you like this beat, if you hated this beat, if you got something from this, or you got some tips from me, go ahead and comment, like, subscribe down below, and I'll see y'all next time I drop another video. Peace.